Good afternoon, and once again, welcome to COMP476 Network Computer Systems. Uh, Today we're talking about stenography. Now you may ask, what does stenography have to do with networked computer systems? And that would be a very good question. Well, we started off with networks, and then we worked into network security, and then we kind of talked about security web things. This is sort of related to security of the web. So let's talk about it. It's interesting anyway. Okay, what is this stenography? It's hiding information. We talked about encryption, which is scrambling up that no one can see it, but you can still see the ciphertext. Steganography is hiding the message so that no one can find it. Well, except for the person who's supposed to find it. Uh, it's been around for quite some time. Uh, yes, I like this uh, statement from August Kirchhoff. Uh, Crypto system is secure, even if everybody knows about the system except the key. Uh, yes, and that's a pretty general statement for cryptography. Even if you know all about it, that's why we have these public key algorithms or algorithms everybody knows that are published. Even if you know all about it, if you don't know the key, it doesn't work. Uh, on the other hand, steganography is security through obscurity. You're hiding the information. It's no real trick, mathematical or something that keeps people from seeing it. They just don't know where it is. Uh, it's been around. This book published in 1499 talked about cryptography. It's kind of an interesting book. The book itself is encrypted. If you knew the key, then you realized the book was about cryptography and steganography. If you didn't have the key, then you thought it was a book about magic. The Catholic Church didn't like this. They don't like, back in 1606, they did not like magic. And so they placed an Index Laborio Prohibitorum, which is just a bunch of books that good Catholics were not supposed to read. Stenography's been around in many forms. I like this one where if you want to send a message, you get some yarn and you dye it in dashes and dots for Morse code. And then once you've got the yarn encoded, you knit a piece of clothing. And then that clothing is worn by some courier, either a scarf or a sweater or something. And then when they get there, they take it apart and look at the Morse code. Uh, Messages tattooed on the head of a courier were used in ancient Rome. And there's always secret secret ink, uh, hidden inks. You can use in lemon juice and then put it over a flame and it can be visible. Or I like the writing under a stamp. All sorts of ways you can hide messages. Now you can use both steganography and encryption because sometimes, even though the message is encrypted, you don't want the other side to know that you're even sending a message. You want to, imagine your computer science freedom fighter algorithm wants to send messages out to all of his followers. Well, he doesn't want the authorities to know he's sending messages, so he could hide them and encrypt them. So you might want to do both. And sometimes uh, steganography is used to hide malware, hide uh, dangerous code. There's an example here where they hid part of it in a picture and part of it in a script, and the script would uh, extract the malware from the picture and run it. Uh, Sometimes you can add secret messages to text that don't show up. You don't see necessarily, you don't usually look at the text of a web page. You see the HTML or the result of the HTML, how it's supposed to be displayed, but you don't look at all the little brackets. Well, you can put text in the little brackets, comments in there, message in the comments that people won't see unless they look at the source code. And then it's interesting, there's a couple Unicode characters that don't show. Was it the zero width joiner and the zero width non-joiner? I'm not really sure what they are, but they don't show. And so you say that the zero width joiner is a zero and the non-joiner is a one, and you can have a series of these sprinkled through your text and have zeros and ones as a secret message. You can also put them in unused fields of files and protocols. Here's your TCP header. If you notice in your TCP header, there's there we go. Here, see if I can get this stuff to show. Uh, do- well, I guess not, but hopefully, I don't know if you can see the gray unused section. Those are bits that the protocol doesn't use. They're normally left zero, and receiving side is supposed to ignore them, but you could put some data there. Or this urgent pointer. The urgent pointer isn't used unless the urgent bit is set. So if the urgent bit is not set, and most of the time the urgent bit is not set, then you can put 2 bytes over here in the urgent pointer. So every TCP packet that goes across has 2 bytes of hidden information. Now, it could be difficult to extract from a normal user because even if you're using sockets, you get the text, you don't get the header. But if you had a program that was reading raw, or you were using something like Wireshark that looks at all the packets, you could save them and then get the message. Hide them in unused fields. You can hide them in unused fields in files. Uh, PNG files have chunks. Each chunk has a header which tells you what type of chunk this is and how long it is. And there's a cyclic redundancy check, make sure the chunk is okay. Uh, if there's a chunk that the displaying program doesn't understand, it ignores it. That allows compatibility. You can add new chunks, and old programs will see gets a new chunk that doesn't know what to do. That just ignores that, but the old chunks work. And I've tried this. In fact, this picture here of the migratory bird, it must be I don't know if that's a European or an African swallow carrying a coconut, but I've hidden the syllabus in that picture. Uh, yes, and you just put in a chunk. I made it my own chunk and put it in the file. It doesn't display that. It doesn't impact the picture at all. There are other ways. Here's an example I got from Wikipedia where all but the last 2 bits. So you remember there's pictures are 3 bytes of red, blue, green, and each byte is 8 bits. If you blank out the first 6 bits and leaving only the lower 2 bits, and then of course that's going to be very small numbers, which is going to look black or almost black. But then you make it brighter, and you see the picture of the cat. There's other more understandable ways where you can hide data in images. Okay, so you've got these 3 bytes for each pixel, the colors. You can use the least significant bit, the rightmost bit as we look at it. And change between that bit and doesn't make a difference because you have 256 different possible values. And so it's the difference between, say, 131 and 132. Not much of a difference. So if you change that. Also, since the bit of your data, say it's a 1, the bit in the actual picture has a 50-50 chance of being a 1 or a 0. So half the time, the bit's going to be what you want it to be anyway. So it's not even going to change the picture at all. So only half the bit's going to change the picture by 256th of the value. And of course, if you have 3 bytes, that's 16, what's that, 16 million, I think. So 1 out of 16 million possible colors. Not going to be very noticeable. Here are some examples. Okay, here's the original picture over here. And here's the picture on the right where I've put the syllabus. Well, I've been hiding the syllabus all over the place. Here's the syllabus. I only used the least significant bit of the blue byte. It's red, blue, green. Oh, no, RGB. Green, blue, red, green, blue. Okay, RGB, red, green, blue. And I used the blue least significant bit. So I only changed one color, didn't change the red or the green at all. I'll tell you, I can't tell any difference between the 2 pictures. Here's another example where I used 2 bits from, I think, the red, 2 bits from the green, and 3 bits from the blue. And still, you can't see any difference between the 2 pictures. Oh, of course, you know what kind of dinosaur this is. It's a stegosaurus. Oh, these don't work real well, so why is it best to use the least significant bits? B, the least significant bits is the one, because if you use the most significant bits, say it was a 3-bit value, if you had a 5. If you change the upper bit, it becomes a 1. Since bit becomes a 5. That's a big difference. If you change the least significant bit, a 5, you change it goes 4 to 5. So it doesn't make much difference. Okay. In this picture, again, I'm putting 8 bits per pixel. In the some of the pictures, you can start to see a little pattern of a grid here in the white and the green where it changes things. So it's just visible. Although I must admit, 8 bits per pixel is probably putting too much data in there. It doesn't hide it very well. There are some real legitimate uses for steganography. It's interesting to note that some brands of color printers add tiny yellow dots on the margin. If you decode the yellow dots, they give you the printer's serial number plus the date and time. So if you happen to send somebody a message that the FBI might be interested in, they can look at the yellow dots and say, oh, this is the serial number of the printer, this is when it was sent, and they can ask the manufacturer, who did you sell that printer to? And yes, also, of course, watermarking is very valuable. Watermarking is marking some often piece of art or some text so that identifies it as yours, or you identify the author of the work in a way that people don't necessarily see. So nobody initially knows that you've done this. But if there's some issue as to who owns this piece of art, well, if you can extract the ownership from something that's hidden inside, you pretty much prove that it's yours. We talked about chafing and winning earlier. It's a system where instead of using cryptography, you use a media access code where you send a whole bunch of packets with a bit in it, and the thing has got a serial number and a MAC, and then you send some of them are true data values, and a lot of them are just random values. You make up a random value and a random MAC, and you send it across, and unless you know the key, you can't tell good packets from bad packets. Of course, the receiver receives it, filters out the bad packets, and looks at only the good packets. Now, I explain this as if it was a 1-bit packet, but 1 bit plus the serial number plus the MAC. But it could be hidden in other information in a series of messages where you have the bit, you have the MAC, and user isn't going to know which ones are valuable and which ones are not. So it's kind of hiding it in plain sight. And of course, in addition to pictures, you can put in audio files. We're not talking about playing the music backwards and hearing the secret message, but you can add higher frequencies and other things in the background, particularly if you put it in high frequencies, higher than most people can hear. It's very hard. Or you can put some digital information in an analog signal. That'd be very hard to hear. It just sounds like static in the background, and that would hide the message. And of course, if you're looking at videos are just a whole bunch of pictures, and you can put images in all the pictures. Now, people might want to be able to figure this out. Stig analysis is like cryptanalysis. You're trying to find out, is there a hidden message in this picture? Well, of course, that's hard because the whole concept of steganography is to hide the picture, so it's hard to see if it's even there. Now, if you have an original picture, say you copied a picture and people have the original, you might have copied it off the web someplace, and somebody else finds it on the web someplace, they can compare it. And if they can compare the pictures bit by bit, they go, oh, yes, these bits are different, and know that there is something in there. Of course, you can always change the frequency of things, change something just a little bit, so if their things are hidden. Now, the bits and the least significant bits of an image probably are not totally random, because the image has gradients. Things don't often change, or at least they change in a line. So if you look at the statistical analysis of the last bit, you might find that it is not totally random. Although if you put a steganography message in there, it'll probably look a lot more random than it was before. So you might recognize a hidden message because it adds random bits. Now, compression hides information only because it's, it squeezes out the redundancy in the message. Now, it doesn't mean anybody who has the compression knob can't uncompress it and look at it, but if you compress something, then you can hide it. It's smaller and easier to hide. Uh, there are tools to do this. I went out to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia lists 23 different tools available on the web that you can download to hide text in images or hide text this way or that way. And I tried a couple of them. Uh, Here's the original. There's the image. It looks to me just exactly like the other picture, but it has the first page of the syllabus and the least significant bits of the image. So, and of course, it's very easy to use. You just go out there, you select the picture you're using, you select the text you want to hide, and it puts it in there. And then, of course, there's also an option for that tool to extract the text. So, what can you do about it? Uh, you can try to use specific tools, content threat removal, takes the message and tries to replace it by manufacturing something. Uh, One trick is you can take the message, translate it to a different language, say translate it to Spanish, and translate it back from Spanish to English, which, by the way, doesn't always work real well. Even perfectly good messages translated from one language to another and back don't always look the same, but it would remove any steganography messages. One of my favorites is have a system where you take a screenshot of the text. So you've got the text on the screen, take a screenshot of the text, and then you use character recognition to extract the text from the image. And that, of course, will avoid any secret information that might be hidden in there. Okay, so that's steganography. Uh, don't go away. We're uh, back here. Let me. Any questions about steganography? Except why is he talking about it in a class on networks? Okay, you've got.
No.
All right, let's move on to review for the third exam. Okay. Oh, can you probably can't see this, can you? Hang on. Uh let's okay. Back up, back up. You can read that just a second. Okay, hopefully now you're looking at a screen that says fishing assignment. So everybody can see the picture or the text?
Yeah.
You don't want to see me. That's the worst thing you could do. Okay. Uh, this is just a reminder that there's an assignment out there. It's due a week from Monday, excuse me, a week from Tuesday. This is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So you have plenty of time to do it. It's a phishing. You have to send me a phishing email. I've got some already. Some of them are very good. People have done an excellent job. Some spear phishing ones. The idea is to send me an email that has a link in it so that if I was to click on that link, I'd go to the class website. Well, of course, the class website is not that hazardous, but you don't want to just say, click here, comp476.online. No, you want to make me want to click a link and have it go not to where you claim that it will go, but go to the class website. Okay. Use your A&T email so I know who it comes from. Otherwise, I don't know it's you. Uh, and the subject of the email must be COMP476 phishing. That's important because I've got some rules in my email system. If subject's 476, it moves over to a special folder that I will look at when I want to uh, move it when I want to grade this sort of thing. Okay, so it's due by noon, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Okay. All right. There's a review for the third exam. The third exam is Friday. Or is that less than 48 hours from now? It'll be in class, 2 o'clock, in McNair, or not McNair, in Martin 200. The exam counts for 20% of your semester grade. Each exam counts for 20%. The final counts for 20%, and the average of all homework assignments, without dropping the lowest grade, counts for 20%. I'll go over that in a little bit. Okay. Oh, what is the exam going to cover? Well, for the classroom lawyers, I'll tell you, it includes anything we talked about in class since the second exam. There's not going to be any questions about the material from before the first or second exam, although that doesn't mean you should press the clear button and forget everything before them, because that you may need to know some of that stuff in relationship to a question about what we covered in the last few weeks. Okay, you're allowed a page of notes, one 8.5 by 11-inch page of notes. You can look at it on both sides. You can write it by hand. You can print it. I don't care. Any way you get it. You can't use any electronics. You can't use your phone. You can't use a computer. Just paper and pencil, and or pen. That's all you've got. You probably will not need a calculator for this exam. I don't think there's any numerical answers that you need to calculate. Okay, here are the topics, not necessarily in order that we covered them. It's almost alphabetical, except for a few things stuck here and there when I thought about them. But we're going to go over all these in just a minute, but those are the general topics. Of course, that is almost everything that we covered since the last exam. All right. Keep track. If there's something I don't cover, ask and we'll go over it. Okay,
Can
socket.
I, can I
Yes,
ask a question?
go ahead.
As far for the homework assignment for the phishing, the link that you want us to use, do you want us to create the link or do you want us to like just edit it in the email?
Well, I just want you to make an email uh, that says, oh, you've won the lottery. Click here to get your prize. And where here goes to the class website.
Okay, cool.
Something like that. Yeah. I've got a lot of good ones. They're very convincing. Make me think that I should click there. Okay. Everybody got the assignment? It's easy. It's an easy assignment. Uh, Make it look good. There will be a few points. If you just tell me you're a Nigerian prince and it's just text message and you say click on comp476.online, you're not going to get full credit for that. But everyone I've seen so far is are worth 100. This is a chance for you to get 100. Some of you need some extra points. Okay, so don't screw it up. All right, sockets. We talked about sockets. This is about the first topic since the last exam. Uh, this is a list of the functions that you generally call in uh, Java or Python or C. They use the same sockets, the same names just about. Uh, on a client side, you create the socket, you connect. In Java, you don't actually connect. The creation connects it. In Python, you do connect. And then you send some message. You wait till you receive something. When you receive something, you go back and send something over and over again until you get tired of this and you close it and you're done. The server is a little different because generally the client connects to the server. The client knows the address of the server. There's some sort of link, or you type in something like www.acme.com. The server doesn't know your address until you connect. Hang on here for a second. This just isn't working. Okay, sorry, got distracted by trying to make something work. Okay, so the server side, again, you create the socket. In the server, you bind it to a port. You say, I want to be listening on this port, on this, and then you do the listen. The listen is says I'm listening, and then it comes up and says, oh, this is, I think, blocking. Then it comes with accept. You say, oh, okay, uh, something has tried to connect to me and accept it. Accept creates or a new socket, and you use that new socket to communicate with the client. And then you go through, you receive a message because the client sent it, you receive it, then you send back a reply, and over again until you get tired of that, and you close it, and you can go back and start it again. Sometimes the server will have multiple threads, and after accepts, it'll just go back. There'll be a thread that will go back and do another accept while the generated thread will do the send receive to the client. There's several examples out on the class website. We have clients and servers and Python and Java and whatever format you want. Here is the Python version of the client, because most of you seem to like Python. Uh, Bam, we have the import and statements. If you have to write a program for the exam, you will have to write a program for the exam. So warning right now, yes, there's some programming you have to do for the exam. Write it on paper, yes. But and the center are here, the width, the data, that has to be on the exam. The import, if you leave that off, that's okay. The print, if you just said print data, I wouldn't care for the format. And we're pretty loose in format for this stuff from the exam. Okay. But we're ready to find, and you can write it in Java, you can write it in C, you can write it in Python, you can write it in Haskell or COBOL or PL1, I don't care. Uh,
I have a
okay,
question about this.
excuse me.
So I have a question.
Sure, Barbara.
So will that portion, like this portion mean like the most points or like one of the most like points that on the exam might be worth the most on the exam?
There's a significant number of points attached to the programming question, yes.
Okay, and how difficult will that question be per
Oh,
se?
terribly hard. Uh, no, it's it's difficult enough that if you don't know anything about this, you'll not be able to answer it. But if you do have some clue as to what's going on, you should be able to easily answer it. I don't know if that
Okay,
tells you what it is.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, the purpose of the exam is just to see, for you to prove to me that you know this stuff. It's not for me to prove that I can flunk you. No, I don't know. It's not my goal.
Okay.
All right. Okay, that's sockets. HTTP, we talked about the Hypertext Transport Protocol, yet another protocol. Unlike TCP and IP and several of the other Ps, uh, this is in ASCII, not binary. The TCP header is all in binary, and so is the others. This isn't, you can read this if you look at it. If you capture this with several of the proxy tools available to capture it, you can see what this says. And basically, the request for HTTP is in this format. You start with the method. That's a word like, oh, I think I have them, well, I'll have them in a minute. It's like get or trace or something. Usually get or post are the two common ones. The file name. What file name on the server are you want to get? And then HTTP/1.1 or whatever version you happen to be using. 1.1 generally works for almost every server. I have this little glitch here that means end of line. And there's a bunch of options. And the options are all keyword, colon, value, end of line. Yeah, here we go. So in this example, we want to get. The page you want to get is my page. So somebody typed in HTTP colon slash slash comp476.online slash mypage.html. So you break apart the path and the file name and put it up here. You put the name of the host down here. So it's get space the name of the page space HTTP/1.1 or 2, whatever version you're using, 1.1, end of line, and then host colon space, then whatever the host, the name of the host, acme.www.acme.com or ncat.edu or comp476.online, whatever your host is. This is an option, although it's a required option. It started out as an option, but now very quickly they realized they were going to have web servers that served multiple websites. So you had to tell them what website you were going to so that the web server would know what pages to give you. And it all ends, by the way, with two end lines. So it's a blank line. Again, there are many things. Get and post are the most common ones. Head just provides information about the file. Um, that can be used for a couple of reasons if you want to know what dates of the file are. Also, there are tools to go out there and check websites for broken links. You can just do a head request and say, Does this file exist? And you'll get either you get the head back, you don't actually download the text of the file, so it makes it run a lot faster. And of course, put and delete are there for managing files on the server. Obviously, there's a little bit of security connected to those and others. Okay, when you send that GET request off to the server responds. It will say HTTP slash, well, 1.1 or whatever version we're using today, space, then a status code. The 200 is the happy status code saying everything worked. And you've probably seen, 405, file not found. The reason is just English explaining this one in case somebody's looking at it. And then a bunch of options, a whole bunch of response options, and then a blank line, and then the contents of the file, which is usually HTML or whatever. Here's an example I showed before. Again, there's the GET request. You need the GET space and then slash metric prefixes.html. So this is from the class website slash metric prefixes.html, and then space the HTTP version, the required option, host that, and then a whole bunch of options here, which are not necessarily required. And they have all sorts of things. User agent, what kind of browser are you using? What kind of compression do you like? All sorts of other things that are not important for this class, but there are options. Here's response. There are fewer options on the response. Against it responds. Notice it's using version 2. I said I'm using version 1.1, and it said it's using version 2. Okay. 200, which is the happy code saying everything's okay. And then a bunch of things. What server softwares are using, the date and time, telling me I'm sent it, HTML. Here is a cookie. Oh, well, there goes. Yes, sorry. Uh, yes, set cookie. That is that the server is sending a cookie to the user, and it does it with the set cookie command. What is this? Setted or PHP session ID, and it gives this long letter numbers and letters up to F. Well, that is probably a hexadecimal number. It's a big hexadecimal. I think count is like 16, no, 32 characters or something. Yeah, so it's a big 32, that'd be a 128-bit number. Okay. And then date and time, when was this last modified, and other sort of thing. When it expires, pages expire. That way, if you ask for the page before it's expired, you just uses the current page. Otherwise, it will go out and ask again. A web page is usually multiple files. There is the original HTML, but the HTML has lots of images and other things embedded in it, particularly pictures. And each image has to be downloaded by HTTP. Depending on the version of HTTP, old version of HTTP, it does it sequentially. Newer versions do them in parallel. You have multiple ports downloading all these files at the same time. Okay. By the way, if anybody has a question about something, just scream out. Uh, it's kind of hard for me to see chat messages while I'm doing this. So just unmute yourself and yell at me. Okay, advertising.
Sir, I have a question.
Fire away.
Yeah, just curious with the HTTP um, type of questions, how would you format those questions for us to answer? Because I know we have the different types of methods and the server response and HTTP response. Uh, I guess what I'm asking is, yeah, what exactly should we know regarding all the HTTP information? Or
Well,
in
what
what
if you
format will the
wanted to
questions
do
be?
it? Okay, this is what I think I used the Chrome browser, and this is what the Chrome browser. Well, yes, aha, yes, I used Chrome version 140.0.0.0, running Windows. Well, I wasn't. I was running Windows 11, but anyway, all sorts of stuff like that. But that's what Chrome. Well, you don't need all those options. You can do it with just the first two lines. Uh, so know how to. You wanted to write a program that sent the data by yourself. How would you do it? What's going on here is another question. What is this thing doing? Here you could be able to say, oh, this is going to get comp476.online/metric prefixes.html. And yes, what is this doing? Ooh, look, cookies. Yummy. Uh, I don't know if that explains it without giving you the questions, but
No, it does. Thank you.
okay. No, I'm not going to ask you about all these options. Host, you ought to know about host. But after that, no, they exist. If you see them, yeah, you can look them up if you want to know what they mean. Same thing for this. Okay. I think I mentioned that. All right. Advertising. Uh, this is interesting because we see this in our life. You go out and want to buy something at Amazon, and then the next day you go to some completely different website and you start seeing advertisements for those widgets you were looking at on Amazon. What's going on? Well, Amazon is an advertiser. Amazon tells ad networks, which are companies that sell advertising, Google, AdClick, those are some of the big ad networks. And Google tells the ad network, oh, this person likes widgets. And so when you have if you're a publisher, people who have websites, they want to make some money. So they put advertisements on their websites, sometimes dozens of advertisements. You've been there. And so these advertisements are not originally put into the web page. When somebody creates the HTML, they don't put the specific ad. They put a request to the ad network to put an ad here. And the ad network gets a cookie from the website, says, who is this person? Or doesn't. If they don't get a cookie, they just send an ad as paid for by the advertisers. They send back an ad. If you get a cookie, you know who it is. They look up and say, what is this person interested in? Oh, they've been looking at widgets. Send them an ad for widgets. Maybe they still want to buy a widget. And so that's why you'll see directed advertisements, even though you might not have done anything in that web page related to the advertisements. The ad network knows all about you. Cookies, I mentioned cookies. Yes, cookies are information sent between the browsers and the server that is not displayed to the user. It's, in some sense, hidden information. It's a real simple concept. You want to go to a website, you send a request to go to the website. The server responds with page you wanted and a cookie. I think we go back to there. Yes. Look, the set cookie statement here, that's a cookie. The browser, the browser will save that value. Oh, and it saves it. And then when the browser sends another request to the same server, it will send that cookie along as part of the HTTP header. You never see it, but it's sending back and forth. When the server gets that cookie, it goes, oh, I know who this is, because the web pages are pretty much stateless. They don't remember anything from request to request. When it gets a request, it's kind of like everything starts from the first time. It gets a request and says, oh, look at this cookie. Who is this? Oh, that's the guy I just talked to. Pretty useful if you want to log in and stuff like that. So now you know that you've been communicating with this user, what you told them previously, if you keep track of this sort of stuff in the cookie, or you can just keep track of it in a web page, or excuse me, not a web page, a database. And if you look at there, this cookie is just a big number. That's probably just a key to a database. So it uses that number and then checks this database. This is what information do I know about this user? Okay. All right. Text messages, the small messaging system, which sends small and sometimes longer messages now, sends data for texting. It uses the telephone system. Interestingly, it uses the telephone system's signaling channel. Instead of using the data, which of course the data is used for sending voice, it uses the signaling channel, which exists out there, is used all the time to set up a signal. If you want to call somebody, all the call information, the phone number and stuff is sent over to the signaling channel. So the signaling channel is there. So some bright engineer said, well, since it's already there, why don't we use it? So they use SMS, sends all of its data over the signaling channel. That's what it didn't really cost them. That's interesting because that's exactly opposite of what FTP, the file transport protocol, uses. The file transport protocol has two channels. It uses port 21 and 22, I believe. I think those are the numbers, or 21 and one of the adjacent ports, because one of them is for control, because I want to send this message, And then the other one's for data. It sends the data one way or the other. Okay, that's signaling. Cryptography. We talked a bunch about cryptography. Of course, this is a networks class, not a cryptography class, but cryptography is important for network security. So we'll talk about it a lot. Here's your general concept of cryptography. Uh, you've got plain text, which again is just bits. It doesn't matter whether it's text or an image or a web page or a program. It's bits or bits. You take those bits and you encrypt them uh, using a particular key, and what you get after that is ciphertext. Ciphertext looks like a random bunch of bits, and you can't make any sense of it unless you run that ciphertext into the proper decryption algorithm with the correct key, and out pops the plain text, which should be identical to the plain text that went in. And so an adversary uh, in the middle can't make any sense of this, but you can send messages and somebody who knows the key can receive them. Now, encryption will scramble up the message so it doesn't look like anything. There are other systems that scramble up. I mentioned compression and encoding. Compression, of course, squeezes the data, takes out the redundancy, so you have a much smaller file, which is nice. Uh, those of us with gray beards remember they didn't do a lot of compression several years ago. But then processors got faster. They finally figured out, oh, hey, we can do this. So they compress the information, transmit across the network, and then decompress it because the processors are faster and they can do this compression. The CPUs got faster than the networks got faster. That makes sense? Yes, the rate of improvement of CPUs was better than the rate of improvement of the networks. So by compressing, they can send the data quicker. And of course, we've talked about base 64 encoding. Imagine you encrypt something, and now it's a bunch of random bytes. Well, the random bytes have any bits. They don't look like characters, just random bytes. So you might need to base 64 encode them to send them over some system that doesn't like random bytes. Okay, there's two general flavors of encryption. There's symmetric key, or known as private key encryption, or secret key encryption. And then there's public key, or asymmetric. Symmetric key uses the same key to encrypt as decrypt. So you take your plain text, you encrypt it with the key, you send it across the network, or you might store it in a file, and then later you or somebody else looks at that file and can decrypt it with the proper algorithm using the same key. This is the same key that they use to encrypt something, and then out comes the plain text. The big symmetric key algorithms are DES, the data encryption standard, which is outdated and been replaced by the advanced encryption standard, the Reindahl algorithm. Those are very commonly used. Now, for public key encryption or asymmetric key encryption, the key to encrypt and the key to decrypt are different. Now, you can encrypt with the public key and decrypt with the private key, or you can do it the other way around. You can encrypt with the private key and decrypt with the public key. It works both ways, interestingly. But the two keys are mathematically related. We talked about the mathematical relationships, which I'll not cover here. And in fact, I can promise you the math will not be on the exam. Okay. Because it's not all that important for you to know that sort of stuff. Anyway, so again, because it's a public key, somehow people can know your public key. You can put it in certificates, you can put it in a public key directory, you can get a key server to send it to you. Okay, so you send it, encrypt it, and decrypt it with the public key. I note that RSA encryption, RSA being the leading public key or asymmetric key algorithm, and the Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm both rely on the same mathematics to hide things. They take the text message, of course, it's just a bunch of bits. You might think of it as text, but it's also a number. It raises it to a particular exponent, mod particular number, and you get the ciphertext. To decrypt it, you take the ciphertext, raise it to the appropriate exponent, mod n, and you come back with the plain text. There's the E and the D values in RSA. Anyway, both the Diffie-Hellman and RSA. Why? Because this particular mathematical action appears to be very difficult to reverse. That given you know the ciphertext and you don't know what D is, it's darn hard to convert it back to plain text, at least so far. Now, once you have a good encryption algorithm, just because you got a good algorithm doesn't do everything. You have to know how to use it properly. You have to have the effective encryption mode. And there's several modes. The simplest one, which is least effective, is just take each block of text, break it into blocks. And the AES algorithm, it's 128 bits. So you take 128 bits of text, 16 bytes of text, and then you run it through the AES algorithm with the key, and you get ciphertext. You do it for the next 16 bytes, you get the ciphertext, so forth. And that works. It's pretty very, very simple. The problem is that identical pieces of plain text produce identical pieces of ciphertext. The cipher block chaining is not much more difficult, but makes it much more difficult because different same pieces of plain text will produce different pieces of ciphertext. All you do is you take the previous block's ciphertext, you exclusive OR with the plain text, then you encrypt it, and so on, and go and do the same thing. You start the whole thing with some initialization vector, which is some value that you send along with the data. If you're doing a network, just send the beginning or you store it in a file or something. Another system that's interesting is the gallows counter mode, or GCM. GCM takes basically a key, which is like no, it's not. It's not the key. It's initialization vector again. Look at that as a big number. Increment it. That's counter one. You encrypt this with the key. Doesn't show the key, but keys here. Encrypt that. You get the plain, and then you get some random value after that. It doesn't. It's not really random. It's the counter number encrypted. Of course, a whole bunch of bits that look random. You exclusive order the plain text with it, and it gives you the ciphertext, and so forth. The nice thing is, okay, this is the counter encrypted by once. Well, this one's the counter encrypted by two. You don't have to do this before you do that. With a little thought, you go, oh, this is 2 plus the counter value, and you can do a 3 plus and 4 plus and all the way up to 8 plus, whatever, how many processes you have to do the encryption. That. An interesting question, how do you decrypt this sucker? It's really quite simple. You just replace the plain text and the ciphertext. So same thing, got to have the right key, right? Proper initialization value. Go through here, you encrypt the counter, and then you just exclusive OR that encrypted value with the ciphertext, and you get the plain text. Yeah, that should be obvious. If you remember that if A equals B exclusive OR with C, then A exclusive OR B gives you C. It undoes itself. Okay. We have encryption for Wi-Fi systems. There's all sorts of different encryption. WEP is one they created that didn't work very well. It wasn't strong enough. The people found a flaw in it. In fact, one of the computer science classes had an exercise which everybody was sending messages back and forth, and they would decrypt the message. They could figure out the key. Here's a question, and let's see if we can really do this question. Hang on. Where are we? Why can't I ever find anything when I want? Oh, okay. Stand by. And bingo, you should see true false question in front of you in Zoom. Give it a shot. Oh, answers are coming in. Okay. Half the class is answered. Let's see if the other half can come through. All right. Okay. Anybody, a couple more students? Okay. Anybody else want to put their guess out there? All right. That's enough. You should be able to see the results now. Everybody can see the results. True at 84%, false at 16%. Hopefully you can see that. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Okay. So I click there, and I click here, and now that should be gone. Okay, so 84% of you said true. Unfortunately, that's the wrong answer. This is a common misconception that if you don't have Wi-Fi encryption, anybody can read everything. No. Now, why? Because Amazon uses HTTPS. almost, what is it, 86, some 90% of all the websites use HTTPS and not HTTP. HTTPS uses TLS, transport layer security. It encrypts everything. Now, if somebody is watching, they can know that you're going to Amazon because they can see the header of the TCP packet, but all the data inside that is going to be encrypted. So while the TCP header is there, that's all they can see. They can't, so they can't decrypt what you're sending. So yeah, everybody, 86% of you guys, or it was 84% thought it was true, and that's probably even uh, less so than the average public. No, this is not true. Remember, HTTPS is another layer of security. Now, if you have Wi-Fi security, it encrypts not only the text but also the headers of TCP and IP, and so then the attacker doesn't even know you're going to Amazon. Okay, everybody understand that? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick. Digital signatures, you better know those. TLS, it's faster. Quick protocol. Quick protocol uses UDP. It's kind of interesting. It uses UDP instead of TCP. Uh, it's a lot faster in the setup. And then instead of using TCP, it uses UDP. The nice thing about that also with HTTP3 and quick. It's going to download all the files in parallel over one channel. It doesn't need multiple channels. Also, with TCP, if you lose a packet and you're trying to download multiple files, everything's going to stop until it resolves that issue. Not so with UDP. Okay, Tor, onion routing, that's used for the dark web. ARP poisoning, you better know what that is. SYN floods, we talked about this, is where you cross site. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's important. Cross-site request forgery. Phishing. Ah, yes, send me a phishing message. All right, here's what you really want to know. What is going to be on the exam? Well, there's 8 questions on the exam. One of them asks you to write a program. Another one will ask you to show HTTP commands. And there's a third one that says how to secure some situation. Programming, hey, Python, Java, whatever you like. And I need to see all the parts of the program that relate to the networking. Other parts are not important. Okay, another thing I want to point out. If you read the syllabus, I read it. Heck, I wrote it. Yes, the final exam is optional if I determine that it's statistically unlikely that the final exam will change your grade. I mean, if the final exam is not going to change your grade, why should you bother to take it? Why should I bother to grade it? I remember I had a student who had an A. The only way he was not going to get an A is if he got a 27 on the final. Well, this guy got A's all the time, so he wasn't going to get a 27 on the final. He did the first page of a 3-page exam and didn't even bother the other pages. So let's not do that. Okay, but I get to decide. Here's an example. I will figure it out what your average after you do the fishing assignment and the exam. I'll have all your grades except for the final. Let's say a student has a 79.5. That's in the middle of the B range. They got to get 82 to get a B plus, and they have to score 92 in the final to do that. Remember, right now, after this exam, we'll have finished 80% of all the grading, 20% left for the final. So you have to get 92. You can do the arithmetic. I will do the arithmetic for you. And so you have to get 92 to get better, 67 to get worse. Well, let's say exam scores were these numbers here. It doesn't look to me like they're likely to get below 67 or above 92. So why bother? Now, if you don't want to, if you still want to take the exam, somebody might say, yes, I want to get a B plus. I'm going to try real hard to get a better score. Go for it. You're allowed to do that. Of course, remember, don't really screw up. Most, very, very rarely has somebody ever screwed up. Okay, so by December 1st, which is the Sunday after Thanksgiving, I will return the grades from the exam. It's not going to be graded before then. And I will email you summary of your grades, including the exam score, all your other scores, and that email will also tell you whether you are or are not exempt from the final. If you are not exempt from the final, then you better be there on Monday, December 8th to take the final. Any questions? Everybody good on this exemption thing? Okay. That's
Yeah, it's good.
That's enough for today. Final, it's Friday, 47 hours from now.
I have
Good
a
luck.
question.
Yes,
So you mentioned something about you dropping something. What are you dropping? What would
I
you be dropping?
drop the lowest assignment grade homework. I do not drop the lowest exam, just
Okay.
the assignment.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. If you have questions, send me an email, send me a text, call me or whatever. We can Zoom if you need to. That's it. We ran past our time. Good luck on
All
your
right.
exam.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
I'm having a good one. I'm on vacation. Bye bye.